Yeah, mixing versus mastering. So Chris is a mastering engineer, mix engineer. I more come from the kind of composing, producing angle, but it still involves a lot of mixing and also a lot of mastering. So Chris and I, once he's finished sorting out the live streams, earlier we're talking about when is it time to master.
Yep. Yep, we were.
So thank you for everyone joining us.
And I just need to update it here.
And yeah, so this week we've actually been creating a course all about mixing. So it's quite, yeah, I say quite, it's a very in-depth subject really. What's your opinion of mixing?
It's just like anything, it's a necessary process for, to create, the product, the end product.
Yeah, for me a lot of it isn't just about mixing, a lot of it is about actually arranging and using mixing creative as kind of a composer's point of view rather than as a mix engineer's point of view. I guess from a mix engineer's point of view, you're more listening to the song that's already complete than changing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just edit this.
Yeah, the thing about live streams involves a lot of faffing around.
Yeah.
They're live. So yeah, thank you if anyone's watching this live stream currently. If you've got any questions about mixing or mastering, please put them in the chat and we're trying to answer all the questions the best we can in this live stream. So this is actually episode 9, so we've done 8 previous to this, obviously. Yeah, that's the thing about technology.
It is.
Whatever you do, you always want to update and change it, so yeah. Right, have you got the stream working?
Yeah, so if we go to
that link,
yeah, and go here, we should.
There we go. There we go.
Whew. Okay, cool. So
if there's a favour, just mute that audio.
Yep.
Yep. So hi, we're here.
We are here. Sorry about confusion.
So Chris wanted to try a different approach to the live stream, and sometimes it's worth just keeping stuff simple rather than messing around a bit. So
Okay.
Christopher, anyway, back to the stream. Hey Chris, how you doing?
Hey Chris. Hello Bharath. Prakash.
11:30 PM in India. Still watching your channel. Thank you.
Love that fan love, haven't we?
Yeah, 11:30. It's pretty late.
8 people watching. That's cool. Yeah. So today's episode, is all about mixing versus mastering. What the difference between mixing and mastering is. When mixing ends, when mastering begins. But first of all, Colin Wood, I'll just answer this question quickly. Do you do all your mixing and mastering in Ableton, or do you use FabFilter? So
FabFilter isn't a digital audio workstation.
yeah, FabFilter's an EQ, so you can use it in mastering whatever DAW that you're using. Do you do all your mixing and mastering in Ableton?
It depends for me. For me, it depends.
I do mastering in Logic and a program called Hoffer for when I'm doing CDs.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, but whatever DAW I would use, I'd probably use the same plugins for the most part.
Yeah, can you explain what Hoffer is?
Hoffer is a mastering application where you sequence, you master, sequence, and author a DDP image, which goes to a CD replicator for CDs. It has all of the information about the CD, all of the metadata, the sequence of the CD, the gaps, fades, and stuff like that. Gaps and stuff. Track times, end times, that stuff.
Okay, I've got a question for you, Chris.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of people that create a song and then put on the mastering plugins on the master bus in the same project they mixed it in?
Well, my opinion is that is mixing.
Not mastering?
No.
Okay.
If they decide... Okay, so mastering is the process of creating the master.
Yeah, the final product.
So let's work backwards. you're an artist, you want to get your music on Spotify, Apple Music, all of that stuff. You need an online distributor. So we're working backwards from the goal. You want your music on Spotify, cool. You need to get it onto a distributor, cool. They need the masters or the master. What's the masters? It's the master copy of the music. If it's a single song, or commonly even in EPs and albums these days, they're just the WAV files. So that's what you upload to them. You upload the masters.
Yeah.
Mastering is everything that goes into making those masters. Quality control, sequencing, optimizing, and authoring.
Okay.
Okay?
Cool.
So working backwards from there even, depending on who the mastering engineer is, like if you've so going back to your example where you've mixed and mastered inside the project, if you're confident enough to go, oh, that's it, and you've rendered that WAV file, that decision you made, and when you click the button and you decided this is it, this is what's going to CD Baby, TuneCore, whatever, the distributor, you decided that was the master, so you'd mastered it. Mastering isn't like plugins on the master bus. That's mixing. But if you decided that that is the master, you mastered it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for everyone watching at home, we've kind of stepped up, or at least attempted to step up, our live streaming game. So if you've got any questions on either Ableton Live or Logic Pro, we can actually try and answer them real time inside the digital audio workstation. So this one right now is Logic Pro. You can also bring up Ableton Live. So if you want us to show you examples in real time, we can try and do that as well, if you're interested in that. So we're using a piece of software called Wirecast, which allows you to kind of live stream and go through. We can move ourselves around like so. If you do want us to actually go in and show you some more digital audio workstation specific stuff, because we have people ask us about like how to do certain things inside the workstation. So we thought might as well set this up if you do something a bit more technical, and we try and answer it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, does that make sense, like in terms of mixing and mastering? I mean, one question that comes up is like, I mean, that at least answers what is mastering,
Yeah.
But and in my opinion, the rest is just music production.
I do think a lot of people from the poll we did the other week get confused between arranging and mixing. Because we're creating this mixing course, and we asked people what kind of things you want in the mixing course, and a lot of it was arrangement tips rather than mixing tips. And it isn't. If someone like me who mixes and composes, mixes and arranges, or probably not in that order, composes, arranges, mixes their own music, mixing and arranging, there is a lot of crossover.
There's a lot of overlap.
But when it's someone like Chris who's a mixing engineer, he's not arranging the song. You're not really moving. No. I don't know. You're not changing the chorus 4 bars later. You're mixing the piece of music. But it's similar, but I think it's pretty different.
Yeah, I mean, there's...
So hello to Basilo.
Basilo from Africa.
Africa, how you doing?
Hello. So mixing is like baking a cake, right?
Yeah.
You have ingredients, and when you bake them, you mix them together. But before you bake them, you have to measure how much ingredient there is relative to the others. Like 2 parts sugar to 1 part flour to half a part something else. You know what I mean? And the balance of those ingredients determine the quality of the product. If you get that balance wrong, it's going to have a bad taste. Too much sugar, you're like, oh, it's too sweet. Not enough sugar, it's not sweet enough, right?
Yeah.
So, so mixing is just, picture yourself on the mixer, whether that be a software mixer or a hardware mixer. And the balance that you're making on the faders, that's the most fundamental meaning of mixing. If you change the level of the guitar, you've changed the mix. That's the mix. But there's also the details of the mix as well. But there is a lot of things there's a lot of overlap. There are some things that you do in mixing that are beyond that, because you're doing it because it will help the mix. Because sometimes the material like sometimes the material going into the mix, the tracks, they've already limited the mix if they're not tuned right, if they're in the wrong key to each other or something like that. No amount of mixing.
As a mix engineer, you can't
not really
change or tune the notes.
Not really.
A little bit, maybe, but not really.
But those are the things like.
If it's a bad song, it doesn't matter how well it's mixed. It's going to be a bad song.
Exactly. So, yeah. So there's all sorts of things that come up, like recordings, like a really bad recording. Is a bad recording. Like it's very difficult to make it a good recording when it's already been recorded.
I had I won't mention who they are, but I had someone message me, someone that I know quite well messaged me saying, I've recorded piano and the violin. I want some tips on mixing it, making it sound better. I was like, oh, okay. What did I say? Where did you record this? What did you record it with? And they went, oh, I recorded at my friend's house using my iPhone.
Yeah.
And I was like, it doesn't matter what plugins you use, it's not going to sound good if you use it on your iPhone.
Yeah, I mean that's I think that's
extreme example.
So I think in my opinion, in some ways,
you can't. My point is, don't try and fix it in post.
Well, you can't
get a nice,
you can't
high quality recording to verse with.
You can
then you can improve it in post, but you can't fix it in post.
In post, you can make best compromises of the compromises that are available, but you can't fix a recording in post. Like, I think, in my opinion, I think mixing is something that's seen very much as, in these days, the holy grail where the song is made good. I don't know why that's happening, because that's not necessarily the case, but it's happening.
Plug-in marketing, perhaps.
Yeah, it is plug-in marketing. I'm not going to lie. I just wasn't going to say it, but like, it is that. But you know, and I think that's where I think there are many conversations that I've had with people through courses, through teaching and stuff like that, where I'm like, well, this isn't actually a mix issue. You can't mix this good.
Yeah.
Because the recording, it's clipping, it's distorting. You can't just throw it into a mix. You can't start with bad ingredients.
I had someone today
that
I met earlier in the city centre showing me his audio recording, and it was clipping.
Yeah.
And I told him it's clipping. He's like, "What do you mean clipping?" I was like, "It's kind of going the Reddit distortion. It's going past 0 decibels, so the audio it's ruined, man. He needs to do it again." He's like, "Oh, I can just fix it in post." I was like, "You can't fix that in post.
Yeah.
Just do it again."
Output is relative to input.
Yeah. There is that plugin. What did I use? I can't remember. Anyway, I did the recording a while ago, and it's slightly clipped, and I did manage to actually fix it in post.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but only a little bit. When it's clipping badly, of course, you can't do that.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's mixing. So mixing is balancing, mastering is optimizing and authoring. It's making the final product, it's not the plugins that you throw in the master chain. Chris Pavey asks, is that RXD Clipper? Could possibly have been.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So Al Parola says
I got I basically got like the 30 day free trial just to check it out, and it did work all right, but it's not. I'd rather not rely on that. I'd rather just get a good, decent recording, and then last resort I use that. But I don't know. I'd feel a bit more sane just doing it all again.
So Al Parola asks or says, someone once told me it's better to mix everything in mono, saying every track has to be on mono. Explain me something.
If you're mixing a voiceover, for example, like with us speaking now, this can be mono. But if you're mixing a track where it's in stereo, obviously don't mix a mono.
I think what he means is mix the entire mix with the mono on the master bus.
Oh, so it sounds good in mono and in stereo. I guess a lot of people listen to music on their phones nowadays. You want it to sound good in mono and in stereo. What was that meme you posted the other day when you pan the guitar left? It was a couple where they're sharing earbuds. So people unfortunately do listen in mono. I would try and get it as best you can in stereo and mono, but ideally go for stereo. But if you can get a good in both, what do you think?
I don't think it's a compromise. Like, I think there's this whole mentality now that mixing in mono is this big secret, and like it doesn't make sense because I think this issue has been overcorrected. So like people saying, oh, you got to mix in mono. You have to mix in mono. You don't have to mix in mono. If you're mixing a stereo track, you have to mix it in stereo.
I would mix it in. I'd personally mix it in stereo. Have a gain plug-in on the if you're using Logic Pro. I think Live's the same. Have a gain plug-in and just occasionally switch the mono button on and off just to make sure it sounds alright in mono as well.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't just mix. I would mix in stereo and then now and again
Yeah.
I'd turn it to mono just to check. But I wouldn't mix.
No,
mono.
because it just doesn't make sense. It's like okay, cool. So
it's designed for stereo.
Because let's actually talk about what stereo is, right? So imagine you go to a gig,
Yeah.
right, and the band is playing, right, and the fact that they're not all in the middle behind each other, that's stereo.
Well, you've got all the amplifiers and the PA
Yeah,
system.
you've got
Yeah.
guitarist, vocalist, drummers probably just there, but maybe a bit there, and bassist is over there, and then the amps are coming in different places. That is stereo. If it wasn't mono, they would all be in single file.
It's one big speaker.
Yeah, and the speakers would just be in single file, you know? Like, that's, because I'm trying to make that as visual as possible. Like, that is mono, but you wouldn't go to a gig and go, okay, can you all line up, please? Because we are performing in mono. We need to perform in mono. And it's like, okay, cool, but why are they all like that? Why is all the I can't see anyone.
I would. Well, what I do is I check it in mono as well, but I wouldn't mix it in mono.
Yeah, check in mono,
Yeah.
but I don't think mixing in mono is this big secret that's gonna help you with everything. Like a good stereo mix. Like I think my worry is that people think, oh, stereo isn't mono compatible. No, good stereo, proper stereo is mono compatible. Like, as long as there aren't any problems, but you should check, you should deploy these practices. Like, if there's a stereo track, I probably check what it sounds like in mono anyway.
If you're doing some
You know
kind
what I
of like hardcore Pink Floyd style extreme panning, maybe it might not work in mono. If you're doing like 100% left at the guitar and 100% right the organs, that's a bit kind of 70s style now. But
like you should mix
a lot of death metal, heavy metals. The guitars are heavy panned.
But as long as they're not exactly the same guitar clip, No.
They'll have
exactly.
They'll have the breakdown, just the guitar on the one side and it kick in. But that's the style.
No,
I like that stylistically.
But even in metal, like you record the same guitar part twice, one hard left and one hard right.
No, a lot of the time you just get hard. But that's part of the style.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But like to get that big wide guitar part, sometimes you'll have 4 different parts recorded on right.
Yeah, I've just read Chris's comment. You've opened a whole new style of gigs, mono gigs.
Mono gig.
That's all the kids in Shoreditch should be doing that this time next week.
I'll be there. So, yeah, I mean, check mono, but mix the mix. Is it going to be a stereo mix? Great, mix it in stereo. But just checking the mono ref is like checking on other systems. It's just another thing that you should do at some point.
Yeah. So we've got a few more questions.
Okay, so Al Parola says, audio being played on big sound systems, I'm still in love with the moving of the sound. And sometimes when I change the sound to mono, loses a great part of its magic in some cases. Yeah, but mono is less than stereo. Like, mono will never be as big as stereo. Like, going back to the gig analogy, that's the equivalent of just a smaller stage. It just isn't as big. It can't ever be as big and as great as stereo, but just make sure it's okay. You will lose something.
Yeah.
You will lose something, but as long as it's not catastrophically bad, it's just, it just sounds smaller. It's supposed to sound smaller. It's mono. It's just less room, So yeah, as long as it's,
Question from Creative Coaching.
Career Lights Coaching.
Oh,
Hi guys.
Career Lights. I don't
Do you
have
encounter audio
my
problems
glasses on.
in Ableton when using a more elaborate mixing chain with EQs and limiters, compressors? I'm considering changing to Logic. That shouldn't be the case as long as you...
So audio problems in Ableton.
Shouldn't be the case.
Have a look at your CPU. Have a look at all the CPU power. How much?
Yeah. Depends what kind of audio problems it is. Check your gain staging as well. Like if all of your levels are really hot and it's clipping, or not clipping, but going into hot to de-essers and compressors.
I don't think using a different DAW make a difference. I think it's probably more how powerful your computer is, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Well,
I can't really tell.
Could you elaborate? Yeah, if you could elaborate on audio problems, that'd be
Does
great.
it glitch? Sometimes in live, if it's pushing it too hard, you can get some glitches. I've experienced that before on old Macs. Oh.
Okay, but even what's the symptom? What does it sound like? What's the problem that you're hearing? Craylice, please.
If it's a copy of Ableton that might not be legitimate, perhaps, I'm not sure. I don't know. I recommend getting the official copies. I'm not sure if that makes a difference, but you get more support if you get the real one. It sounds normal but starts stuttering. Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's a computer issue.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I would contact Ableton about that and just get it sorted out.
Yeah.
Hi, John. How you doing, man?
I'm not sure. I would check out live. All legit. Okay. Well, if it's all legit, which is a good thing, contact Ableton Live support and they should sort it out for you.
Yep, they employ people to do that, so they'll help you. Could be a weird plugin, a buggy plugin or something.
Could just
try bypassing all the plugins and see if it still happens.
I'd try and isolate the problem as well. Bypass each one separately and find out which is the one that causing the problem. Apart from that, I'm not too sure about seeing it, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay, cool. So, yeah, I mean, that's the difference, isn't it, between mixing and mastering? The above, like, mastering. People, I think mostly know what mixing. Well, mostly know what mixing is. I think mastering is more mysterious.
When I was growing up, when I was like a teenager learning music, I was always told mastering is a dark art. Don't try and learn it. Get someone else to do it. I was always told that. Yeah, we don't want to master this track. We'll mix it, but we're not going to master it. We get someone else to do that. It's a different world. That's what we were always told.
I mean, it might have been a dark art when mastering actually meant like creating like a master tape, and that process of transferring, but not in digital. It doesn't have to be a dark art in digital at all. It's not actually anything that you're not already familiar with. If you are roughly familiar with mixing with, your digital audio workstation and the plugins that are inside in today's 2018 digital world. But
well, I'd like to hear from people watching this now who masters their own tracks and who sends it to someone else, because I've always found that quite interesting. Like what I do is vast majority of the time get someone else to master my tracks, mainly because of a kind of a perfectionism curse of being a bit of a perfectionist. I'd never feel like the track's done. Like I was talking to Chris earlier, we were talking to my friend on Skype. I've got so many projects and so many tracks, haven't released 90% of them at least. I just don't feel like the songs are ready. I don't feel like they should be released. But really, if I just did them the best I could and sent them to a master engineer, boom, they get me back, the songs are done, I've got to release them. That's probably what I should do.
Psychology behind committing and getting someone else to take care of the rest of it.
Yeah. For me, a master engineer isn't really improving the mix. A master engineer is more to finalise the mix.
Yeah.
That's what I see it as. Because I could probably do most of it myself, but I'd rather them send it to them, then I'm not touching it. It's done. I'm not changing it. So for me, that's how I see mastering, personally.
Yeah. John says, I'm not a musician composer, so I can't say my songs, but I do master the songs that I mix. Yeah, fair enough. Some do, some don't. Some mixers use mastering engineers as a safety net.
Okay.
Because mastering engineers are consultants as much as anything else. They're ears. You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense to me that a lot of people go, oh, I feel better knowing that it's been the seal of approval has been made on this going out. The responsibility, because the mastering engineer makes the call on the final product. They are the last person to touch it. So, and a lot of people don't like that responsibility. And mastering engineers they want that. They do that. That's what they do. But if you're confident enough to do it, do it. I mean, you don't have to hear me say that. You're confident enough to do it, so you're going to do it anyway. So, Grey Lights Coaching says, up to now, I thought mastering was the tweaking of separate tracks, like in the old days of a master tape. No, that's mixing. you're doing stuff to the, what do you mean by tracks? Do you
Separate
mean
instruments?
separate instruments or separate songs? Because
I
that
think
that
it means
word
separate instruments.
yeah,
believe.
okay. I mean that's mixing because that's mixing because you're doing those things for the benefit of the mix. You don't mix vocals and then mix drums and then you mix the mix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you go into those.
Well, you do
for the
solo
benefit.
each one and then unsolo it and check it and go around. But it's the overall. I've made that mistake a lot of time. I'll spend ages on one instrument, either maybe changing a few of the notes, extending the chords, maybe kind of mixing it, changing some stuff around, then unsolo it, listen to it in the mix, and I've just ruined it.
Yeah, and I mean that's one thing.
Yeah.
Just try and stay in context all of the time. You're not, at the end of the day, unless you're releasing acapellas or just for whatever reason you're going to release the drum tracks by themselves, that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like it, because and as well, a lot of the times, all these things that you might be cleaning up and all these details that you're getting obsessed with don't exist in the mix.
Yeah.
Because the masking and everything like that is really, really real. Like when I was mixing that one with you and Pete, sorry, like I was like gating.
It's noisy, wasn't
it? I was even doing multi-band gating expansion on specific things, and then I bypassed. I went back to the mix, like unsoloed the thing that I was working on, toggled the bypass on the multipressor on the vocal, thinking, oh man, I've just done this great thing. And it didn't make a difference.
Yeah.
There was no audible difference.
So I created a song with Peter Darling, and the audio we recorded was quite noisy. I'm not sure what it's on. Maybe a bit of a noisy room we were using. And Chris tried to tidy it up. In context, all the drums, all the chords, all the synths going on. You can't hear it's noisy.
It doesn't make a difference because our ears are really limited in terms of how much sonic information we can process. If two things are very similar in frequency, or one thing is louder than the other and it's a similar frequency band, the other thing that won't exist.
If you're in a room and there's a fan going, you don't notice it's there, but as soon as you turn it off.
And you spend all of this time on this vocal, soloed, and you're like, it actually sounds worse because it's now thin and it's too perfect or it's too big now and it doesn't fit inside the mix. Remember, you're always mixing the mix, you're not mixing the tracks individually, you know what I mean? Al Parola says, I've been using your quick mastering formula. Please, that Logic tutorial, works pretty well. Probably
nice.
Video.
Yeah, well on YouTube. Cool,
Deepesh says, hey guys, I'm just a beginner. I am not able to mix vocals in the track properly. I don't know where I'm lacking. I mean...
I would say start off with the basics. Learn about gain, learn about EQ, learn about compression, learn about gating, learn about bussing and sends.
First of all, just try and find its, like...
If there's any problems as well.
Yeah, but just try and mix. Like, try not to overly diagnose everything at first. Just try and get a balance down. And then from there, you should be able to go, okay, cool. Sometimes it's too loud, sometimes it's too quiet, or it's clashing with something. Like, you can't just go EQ and compressing things.
No, but it's good to know what they do in case you need to use them. If it sounds fine, leave it. But if there's any problems, try and isolate the problems and fix the problems.
But this is, I mean, the stuff that goes into mixing vocals, or sorry, should I say, mixing songs, that's untold. Like, and the mix itself has its unique problems. And you need to solve them uniquely. Like, you can't. Yeah. I can't just say this is the vocal chain that's going to work.
Yeah, I would only call it mixing vocals if it's an a cappella or if it's like a choir. Otherwise, it's mixing the track. It should all sound like one song.
Exactly. So John makes a good point here. I'd say that you also should clean the other tracks. Some of the vocal mixing problems come from the rest of the mix. Yeah. So all of the instruments are relative to each other. Like sometimes actually what you need to do to a vocal is actually to do like sometimes. If the vocal just isn't cutting through, it's not something you need to do to the vocal. You need to do it to the piano track that's clashing with the vocal.
Yeah.
You might need to carve an EQ on it, or you need to tone it down, or something like that. So yeah, you make a good point, John. Kev says, hold tight in the ride. Hi, Chris, Thomas, and guys. Hey, Kev. Career Lives Coaching, do you offer tutorials in mastering? On Thomas's channel, this channel, there's a tutorial on mastering there.
Yep. Do you want to put the link in the description? in the chat. So Chris is going to put a link to a chat for
Which one?
thomasgeorge.com/course offers. If you do want to
Yeah, there's
check out a course, there's a free one on YouTube. That's like 20 minutes of mastering. Chris and I have created like a 5-hour one as well if you want to take it more seriously. But it depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, so we've got a mastering course. Otherwise, you can check out the tutorial in this channel for mastering. And that 2-part song you posted with Pete, Tomas.
Cool, thanks.
Says Danny Elliott.
I've got some more songs. I think there's another like 4 or 5 I did with Pete. I'm going to post next week or so. I've recorded some new songs with Pete as well. Pete's a really great guy to work with. He nails it every time. He's so good.
It's just fun.
Yeah.
Working with him. Right.
So I think if you're working with a singer, it's just to find someone. I'd find someone you vibe with, you get on with, who you resonate with, who wants to make some music, and just keep using them really, rather than bouncing through all different singers. I enjoy working with Pete. He's
a nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy, nails it. Similar kind of vision. But yeah, the thing about, for me anyway, is releasing songs. I've got so many tracks. I just don't release them.
You need to release more.
Yeah.
I keep telling Thomas he needs to release more of his songs because he's got some great stuff in all of the Logic projects.
Loads of them.
Some of I've been going like scraping through a lot of his projects, and I'm like, why haven't you released this? Oh, it's on SoundCloud. Okay, but why can't I put it in the Spotify playlist?
Most of the time I write. I've been live streaming some of this, but most of the time I just write music just kind of for fun. It's kind of relaxation, rather than to publish, I guess.
But we want to hear it. You know, I want to hear the end product, which is why I'm mixing some of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Yep. Welcome. Thank you to all of you.
If anyone has any questions on mixing or mastering, let us know in the chat. If you've experienced any problems with mixing and mastering, let us know. If you want us to go through in Ableton Live and explain. This is actually Logic Pro. If you want to go through Logic Pro or Ableton Live, let us know. We can show you some stuff on screen right now in the live stream. If you want us to do that, might be a bit fun.
Ableton Pro X.
Ableton Hybrid, the new hybrid.
Ableton Pro X Cut Final.
With video editing built in. Loops. Loops.
Loops. Studio.
Yeah.
How often do you have... John asks, how often do you have to remove resonances when mastering? Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. Maybe 50% of the time. Not remove, but attenuate, for sure. Like, I mean, yeah, it depends. Sometimes I just find it, I'm like, okay, that needs to go. Sometimes it's just bumps, like, you know, broad strokes. But I'll go in sometimes. I like dynamically controlling resonances, because most resonances, especially when you're at the mastering process, most resonances aren't consistent resonances, and they just come through because like it's something that's exciting the room, or
do you automate that or just find that?
Dynamic EQ.
Okay.
So it goes like, imagine the EQ bump that's just going like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Nice.
Yeah, GD on over. That was it. Kev says, the mastering course I loved. I don't fully understand it still, but it helps heaps. I do my own mild masters now, and the results are wow.
Nice.
Mild masters.
Nice. If you get stuck in anything, remember we've got lifetime access to the lectures. Go back and rewatch them.
And the Q&A section in the course as well.
Yeah, so if you're in the course,
because it's like a little forum as well, so someone else might have that question.
Or drop us a question in either the Digital Music Masters Facebook group or in this live stream as well. We'll try and answer them.
Yeah. No, glad to hear it, Kev. But yeah, I mean, mastering, the thing with mastering, like, you need the information, you need to know the tools, you need to know the process, but even then, it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of context as well. Like, I can tell you the millions of problems that you might face in mastering, but you can't know them until you experience them. Like, sometimes I feel like, you know, with mastering, I'm like, oh, I've nailed it. I can master anything now. And then the next thing comes along, and you're like, whoa, can I solve this problem? And then I start to, and I'm like, oh, maybe if I like dynamic EQ the difference channel in that band or something like that, you know. I'm like, oh yeah. And then you discover something new. Like, experience is the biggest variable, really. Okay. Danny Elliott says, is additive EQ as bad as we're told? Okay, I'm going to answer this question. Additive, subtractive, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter
Well,
because
if you're increasing the gain and it peaks.
clips, like
Yeah. You know what I mean.
that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But that should never happen if you're doing it. That's not a problem with additive EQ. That's just a
Okay.
problem with workflow. If you're doing that and it's clipping or whatever, or it's distorting. Additive, like, just if I make a bump in something, I'm actually making a decrease in something else. It's relative, like, you know what I mean? If you're doing EQ right in mastering anyway, you're adjusting the output gain when you do these things. So when you do
Yeah.
additive, you're probably doing a subtractive on the other bands as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So
But
it's not really additive then. You're just balancing it.
yeah, gains. He's right by saying gain staging. In mastering, I call it the chain gain structure. Like you should be getting that down anyway. And these things like is additive EQ a bad thing or subtractive EQ a good thing? That doesn't really make sense to me. That's too absolute. Like because they're relative to each other. Like if you're doing an additive EQ, you're going to be subtractive. You're going to be doing a subtractive. You're likely going to be adjusting the output gain anyway because you want a loudness match the A/B comparison between EQ'd or unEQ'd.
Yeah, because otherwise you're gonna.
Yeah.
If it sounds louder, generally it sounds better. So you're gonna trick your mind thinking it's better because it's louder. Yeah.
So Blue 1945 says, quick question please. The last song I mastered was low. I mean,
Do you want
in
quiet?
loudness. Yeah. Do you mean in loudness? What is the one trick to help get the volume to the best I could? If you... So there's loudness potential, right? There's something called loudness potential. And if you find that you're mastering it and you can't get it loud without compromising it, just go back to the mix.
Well, I'm just thinking of a really simple answer. Limiter.
Well,
Increase the gain and make sure.
Assuming you're using a
have a
limiter
limiter?
and you're increasing the gain into it, but you're getting to a result that you can't get to the loudness goal that you have. It really depends.
Do you ever use maximizers?
A maximizer isn't a thing. A maximizer is a limiter or a compressor and stuff like that inside of it.
There is a plugin called Maximizer.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them
Yeah.
bundled into different things, but
Yeah.
inside they are compressors, limiters,
Yeah.
EQs, or whatever. You know what I mean? But like the when you print that mix, it has a loudness potential, right? And you know if it's crazy unbalanced, like if the bass is too loud, bass, you know, we're not tuned to bass that well. If the bass is really loud in that mix, the loudness potential is going to be really, really low. So if the kick drum is distorting when you're trying to get it loud, maybe the kick drum's too loud.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to turn it down or EQ it in mastering or go back to the mix.
I was
going
going to say, do you ever go back to the client or ever go back to the mix and
yeah,
turn the kick drum?
absolutely. That is mastering.
Yeah.
So
if the kick drum's too loud, if you try and turn the kick down, you might be turning down the bass as well. But if you just want the kick, would you go back to the client blast? Send us again, but like 2D.
Yeah,
down the kick.
I've done that loads of times. One thing I've done loads of times is 3 dB less bass / kick or whatever. Loads of times because most people over
mix it too bassy. Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't have bass.
I've done that before.
Their monitoring
Yeah.
doesn't respond, or like the room and the monitoring doesn't do bass well. It's a big problem.
Well, sometimes it just sounds.
Yeah.
It just sounds more punchy, more bass, obviously.
Oh,
and the mastering engineer can kind of like sort out. Yeah.
If you think that song should be louder, which is an issue in itself, which might not necessarily be true for reasons that I'm not going to go into right now. If you think it should be louder, then go back to the mix and turn your kick drum down by 3 dB. Watch it get louder in mastering. Or maybe turn down the bass by 3 dB. Watch it probably get 3 dB louder in mastering without compromise. You know? Because it's relative, like, you know what I mean? I don't know how else to say that.
I'm just laughing at the title of this live stream, Mixes versus Mastering. So there's only one winner. So
There's, what is there?
no, it's just called Mixes versus Mastering.
I know, but it's kind of cool.
Versus, like it's a fight.
Yeah,
Who would win the fight, mixing or mastering? I think mixing the win. I think mixing.
They both coexist. You can't have one without the other. Right? Well, you can.
But the way we've worded it is mixing versus mastering. But anyway.
Any mastering tips for improving the song translation? Translation is just a product of good mastering, which is the product of good monitoring and good ears and good experience in mastering. Translation isn't in itself a thing like EQ and compression and dynamics and frequencies are. Translation is the product of all of those things done well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't answer your question, but it's the answer.
2 enter the ring, only one
exists.
exits. That's right.
I should have called this stream
Is it going to be a death match or is it to knock out? What do you reckon? Mixing versus mastering?
Well, a mix, I'll tell you what, a mix...
We should have really called it mixing and mastering.
No, mix versus mastering.
Versus mastering. It's more interesting.
So a mix can exist without a master, but the master
Can't exist without the mix.
Wait.
So I think mixing's gonna win. But if it's a final mix, it's been mastered anyway.
If you print a mix, okay, so a master.
If you print a mix, it's mastered.
If I write you a document,
Yeah.
like a legally binding document, that's the master of that document. A master isn't. A master is.
Or is it not the master until I sign the document?
Maybe.
So Daddy says mixing is the master of mastering.
I hope this doesn't get Mortal Kombat levels of violence. Finish him.
We're gonna make like an image later. A meme.
So, okay.
The faders are gonna turn to fists.
Let me throw you a. Imagine that door. Just you have these like faders, just like, and they're like boxing gloves, or like one is like a Mickey Mouse glove on the top of it.
Yeah.
You know, like those. Anyway.
Yeah.
However, a master means the copy. Like, I have a master. Like when we make lectures, right? And Ian edits them for us, and then we upload them. The one we upload is the master.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? But I don't know where I'm going with this. Wait, I've got this. No, wait, I've got another one.
He's got it.
If you've got a mix and you just bounced it out or exported it out, right? Even if you haven't got it mastered and you haven't, and you go, I'm not going to release this one.
Like most of mine.
Yeah, but you haven't printed them yet.
I print a rough.
Okay, cool.
A rough bounce.
That rough bounce.
Just for me to listen to and in private.
That rough bounce is the current master.
Yeah.
Of that mix. Even though you haven't mastered it.
But if it's not going to be released, is it mastered? If it's music for personal
no, absolutely.
enjoyment.
Yeah, because it's archivable.
That's my current master.
You put it into a tangible form. Yeah. That is the current master. You might make a new master later with a mastering engineer, but that is the current master copy. Master copy. A master copy is the copy from which copies are derived from. You know what I mean? Like if you sent that to Ian, if you sent that to you know, anyway.
Question from Al. Chris is good like this. What should be the universal dB rate for a final master?
I don't know where to start. So, first of all, let's focus on dB. So, if I said to you 2 dB, do you know what that means?
2 dBs above 0?
Well, the very fact that you said that as a question validates the fact that what I just said means nothing. Okay. Right? It needs a scale. Not only does it need a scale, but it also needs a like, I can say, oh, this is -1 dB. There's a lot of things that I need to know first. Yeah. You know what I mean? First of all, dB on what scale? Oh, the thing in logic. Oh, cool. So digital full scale. Because in analog, that's a whole other thing. It's a whole different value and different loudness.
I presume he means, digital scale.
Okay, cool. RMS or peak. Or LUFS. Or RMS.
The average.
Average.
Yeah.
Which one?
RMS.
Which one? Which integration time inside RMS? Because that's not standardized either.
The standard one.
There isn't one. So there you go. So Um, 2 dBs is 10 times 1 dB. So these aren't absolute values; they're relative values. You know, so that's another thing. But there isn't. Just to give you an actual proper answer. Who asked?
Al.
Al Parola. There isn't one. Having a loudness, the right loudness, is as much of a musical, artistic, right thing for the material is as, what lyrics should she sing now? It's the same thing. It's dependent on the thing. It's dependent on what you're making. It's not.
So would you have a selection of songs that you want it to sound similar to, and then kind of pick a similar loudness to that?
No, you would mix it well, and it would get to its loudness in mastering without issue.
Okay.
And to help answer Blue's question as well, it doesn't matter anyway. So to answer this new question that came in from Danny Elliott, which is going to help answer all of these questions. Danny Elliott says, what is it that iTunes and Spotify are looking for? Nothing. Because they take care of it for you. Us. For us as the listeners. If I create a master and I upload it to distribution and they push it to Spotify analyze it and go, okay, that's 3 dB above our loudness. They've analysed the relative loudness of it. They've gone, okay, that's 3 dB above our level, but for the benefit of the end user, who's probably going to put this in a playlist with loads of other music, we're going to turn it down by 3 dB. So it doesn't matter. They were looking for well-mastered content. Chris,
Yeah.
that's why Chris is my boy, you know.
I knew you'd get passionate about that question. So, got any more questions?
The loudness issue is always evolving because people are using new techniques and there isn't a standard set for a loudness in a track. Is there? No, there isn't. But it doesn't matter because it ends up being the loudness that the listener wants to listen it to in the end anyway. Not only because the streaming companies manage the loudness on their end anyway. They don't want you to master it to a particular standard. They're standardizing it on their end. They're turning them up and down to make sure that the user gets a constant listening experience. But even then,
Even if it's crazy quiet.
okay, so if it's crazy quiet and it shouldn't be that crazy quiet, it shouldn't be that crazy quiet anyway.
Yeah.
It should have got louder but if it's supposed to be that crazy quiet,
If it's a very quiet part of the song.
if it's
for
a
example.
jazz piece, because it's not necessarily quiet, it might actually just be dynamic.
If it's the intro.
There might be 30 seconds in it that are louder than the loudest songs. But because most of it is quiet, the average level of it is quiet.
So there's one thing that always have to turn up. Do you know the intro of The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden?
Yes.
I can never hear what he's saying. No. Woe to thee.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
What he's
Well,
talking
there's a guy speaking about reckons the number of the beast is 666. I can never hear that. I always have to turn it up to hear it because I like the intro. Turn it up and then poof, blast me with the guitar.
That's not too loud or too quiet. That's too dynamic.
Too dynamic for me.
Too dynamic not because that bit was too quiet. You normalised the loudness you wanted to listen to that song based on the other element's loudness.
No, that part was too quiet. I just can't physically hear what he's saying.
No, that's
and
what I
then turn
mean.
it up and then
But
get
that's
blasted.
what I mean. But you already normalised the listening level. You already decided a listening level based on other things.
Yeah.
So relative to the mix, that bit is too quiet.
Mm-hmm.
The guitars are probably loud enough though, right?
Yeah, the rest of the track's fine.
Exactly.
Just the intro.
So that's not too quiet or too loud. Because remember as well, guys, that a song doesn't have one loudness. A song is a dynamic thing.
Some EDM does.
But even then, like otherwise you can't have a waveform.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you got amplitude going up and like down and stuff.
We've all seen them on SoundCloud. Scroll up, I think there's another question.
Current standard of loudness. Can you make it louder without killing dynamics? Okay, actually, see, loud and dynamic, they're not absolutes either. Like, sometimes you can actually make something louder and dynamic, more dynamic, because there are different ways to measure dynamics, and one's perception of dynamics is subjective, you know? Yeah.
Anyway, a scroll
I'm
up. I
going
think
to-
there's a few more questions. Yeah, so thank you everyone watching this live stream so far. If you've got any more questions, drop them in. We'll try and answer all of them. And
Okay, Chris.
oh, that one.
Oh, yeah, from before. Sorry, I missed this one. Crowlow's coaching. Just ordered your music production in Ableton Live 10 course. Love how you explain it all and already learned a lot. You only offer mastering courses for Logic, no? I mean, I tell you what. I tell you one review that we got in the mastering course recently was from a Cubase user.
Okay.
Because they were like, oh, I watched this course because I go into detail about how compression works, how limiting works, what dynamics are, what mastering is, and how to do mastering. That stuff is translatable to any DAW. Like, he actually said that.
There is a few variations. For example, the Logic's Pro compressor is, in my opinion, has a lot more options than the Ableton Live.
Yeah, but you don't use all of those options.
But you
in
don't
mastering.
use them all, no.
You don't.
I would say, yeah, we do only offer it in Logic, but the kind of, it's pretty similar.
It's pretty similar.
Slight differences, but it's pretty similar.
I don't see me doing an Ableton Live
And
mastering course, but you never know.
generally, master engineers don't use Live, generally.
Yeah, it is cross-platform. You know, I mean, it will be inside Logic Pro using Logic Pro plugins, but there's no good reason you can't translate that.
Yeah, you can, of course, master in Ableton Live, but generally, it's people don't.
Krayla also asks, any ideas on mastering for different media like Spotify changing loudness? So if it's all relative, how do I get to 16 LUFS? You don't need to get to any LUFS. That's the point. Spotify will make it the LUFS they want it to be, no matter what LUFS you send in. Make it right, make it sound great. They'll take care of the LUFS or the loudness, because they don't actually use LUFS.
Some platforms, like if you upload a video to YouTube, it doesn't change the volume level. I don't think.
Does they turn it down if it's too loud?
It doesn't increase it if it's too quiet.
No.
No.
Because it would clip.
Yeah. The YouTube doesn't.
But if it was that quiet, it should have been that quiet. So it is. But it's not. Maybe it's dynamic. You know what I mean? There might be a section, because they can only return a value for a whole song.
They're not going to automate the...
No, they don't. Okay, cool. So they don't compress the stuff. They look at the whole thing, you know, return, like they look at the whole thing and go, what's one value that I can put on the loudness of this song? Cool. Turn it up or turn it down, rather. So no loss of peaks and specific sound. No. 99% of the time, no. Only thing that matters is the difference between quiet and loudness, not loudness. Absolutely. So the dynamics. So Kev is absolutely right. Like, what matters is the relative levels of the mix and the dynamics of the mix. If it's too like, there are some stuff that is too dynamic. In the loudest moments, they are louder than anything, but in the quietest moments, they're too quiet. Because in life, we have a noise floor, and so I'm having to turn it up, you know, or turn it down. Not because it's louder or quieter than the other song, because it's too loud and quiet relative to itself.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say is Chris and I have actually been creating a course on mixing in Logic Pro X, Logic Pro 10, not X. And Chris has kind of finished his section of kind of going through and analysing the plugins and the more technical stuff. And I'm going to go through and basically show you how I've mixed some of my songs. But is there anything else that anyone would want in the mixing course? I'm probably going to put this poll on the Digital Music Masters Facebook group as well. I'm not really sure if there's anything else that we've missed. What do you think?
No.
Maybe like overviews of complete mixing. I thought I'd ask people on this live stream just to get their opinion as well. Might be quite interesting.
So John says classical music, lol. So like that's a really good point. Like, you wouldn't want the dynamics of an orchestral piece on a pop song.
No.
Why would you do that? You know what I mean? Like, it just, because the people who are listening to it in the kitchen on an iPhone whilst cooking dinner are going to be like, oh, where's it gone? Oh, it's just really quiet at that point. You know, it's the context and the culture of the music that matters. I've seen examples of, Krayla says, I've seen examples of songs losing a lot of detail. That's not because of the loudness that went in. That's just because the MP3 or the lossy encoding was really bad, or maybe the master would just sounded bad. You know, it's rare that we hear what went in. We only hear what came out, you know.
So Kev's got a question. We need to talk to some of the boys who mix classical music, heavy dynamics use. A friend of ours, Paul Bailey, he mixes classical music. He's features
masters classical music.
Masters. He's mixes it as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
So Yeah, he featured on our mastering course, but we should probably try and...
We should probably talk to him again.
Talk to him
make
again,
some content
yeah.
with him because
He's kind of
a
old
font of
school,
knowledge.
engineer, master engineer, mixed engineer.
He worked at Abbey Road.
Worked at Abbey Road for like 10, 15 years. Part of the team that pioneered kind of a contemporary mastering, I guess.
Kev says we need to talk to some of the boys who mix classical music. You just read that one out, didn't you? Yeah, interesting. Yeah. But anyway, I want to say an answer to that. Classical music is lovely and dynamic, but the context in which I listen to classical music is different to the context in which I listen to rock music. I wouldn't want big dynamics as big as they are in classical in my rock tracks.
Well, the whole point of the classical recording is to make you feel like you're there watching the orchestra.
Exactly.
And you want those big dynamics.
Yeah, and when you're in an auditorium, you've already got a bigger range in which to listen to music.
Generally speaking, a lot of the classical players use more dynamics when they're playing than a traditional rock band. If you bash away in the drums, it's a little bit different than the timps.
It's more...
Generally.
Yeah, it's more... it's a more dynamic setting.
Yeah.
Whereas a pub isn't. You know what I mean?
There's like... I don't know, Stravinsky's Firebird, there's the piece, what's it called, Inferno, I think it is, where it's just crazy loud, and the rest of the piece gets super quiet. It's such a crazy dynamical piece. Dynamic piece. I made a new word there.
Yeah, we're making words.
But I recommend everyone listens to Firebird. Awesome piece of music.
Al Parola says, I've been finishing my mixes at minus 1.9 dB at its greatest peak, then bringing it up with the master to 0.1, and I think it's been working well till now. If it's working, it's working. Personally, I say if it's working, but until you listen to it onto another sound system and it's clipping. Like, personally, I recommend the peaks at minus 0.1 true peak, which is different to normal peak.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to explain that? Or yeah? Okay, so the true peak is is an estimation of what the peak value will be when the signal is converted to analog. Because in digital, the signal is represented, the waveform is represented by snapshots, and if it's two snapshots here, but the analog, when that line is drawn through them, that smooth line is higher peak value, the true peak is an estimation of that. Okay, so I master to minus 1 true peak, to be honest, but because, it is an estimation, B, sound systems differ, so you're giving yourself headroom to mitigate clipping on all of those, but also C, that extra headroom is good because when you convert from like WAV to MP3, or when Spotify converts it to Vorbis or whatever, that encoding process can create a higher peak value as well, which could end up clipping. So a 0.1 difference probably... I mean, I've seen some masters, they've gone from minus 0.5 peak to plus 3 true peak.
Okay.
Because, and it's just a reality.
So no wall of sound in classical music. There is a lot of instruments.
Yeah.
You can get something called I think it's called a double bass, which is like crazy. I've seen pictures of this somewhere where people actually, there's like two people have to play the double bass, so you can get some. I want to find a photo of that.
John says basically what I said. John says, right now the recommendation about the highest peak is minus 1 true peak, like I said, to prevent distortion after lossy conversion. Yeah,
here we go.
I think that's actually as well the Audio Engineering Society. I can't be sure about that though.
I think this is it. I think it's a double bass. It's got 2 people. Yeah, so you can get a pretty crazy wall of sound in classical music as well.
Danny Elliott says, listen to King Crimson if you want to hear rock music with classical dynamics.
Yeah.
That's prog rock though. It leans into classical and many other things because it's progressive rock as opposed to AC/DC. Yeah. You know what I mean? Chris says, yeah, it's AES recommendation. Cool. Thanks for confirming. Blue says, I assume the knowledge you share is not relative to a particular genre. As a listener, I am applying the knowledge to my style of music to get the best from it. I don't believe in, this is the process for mixing and mastering house, and this is the process for mixing and mastering rap. this is the process for mixing and mastering this project because I've listened to this project and I've understood its needs. It's not a genre blanket thing. I've listened to the material and I've deployed what needs to happen for this material, this song, this album.
I get that question all the time. Like,
It's nothing
is learning
to do-
how to use, I don't know, a synthesizer applicable for trance? Is it learning how to use a compressor applicable for EDM? Is learning how to use an EQ applicable for rap music? If you learn how to use all these things, use your ears, it's applicable for all genres.
Because
Really...
genres aren't even set in stone things. Like, you know, they're not like, oh, because this is a house song, I know it will need this. That's not how it works. I've listened to this song, this recording has an issue, or this mix has an issue because that recording or that.
I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't even think of genre when writing music. I just think of the music that pops into my head and the mood I'm in. Maybe I should think of genre to kind of niche down, or I don't know. I wouldn't really be think if I.
For creating.
Well, it's up to you. For
mastering.
creating music, I don't know if you should really think of genre. Just think of music. But maybe you just want to make house music or whatnot. It's up to you.
Crowlar's question says, "Did I hear it right when you said that you master in different file or DAW?" It doesn't really matter. You just mix or master in the DAW that you prefer to mix or master.
When I do
It's not better or
master,
worse.
generally I do it in Logic.
Yeah.
I'll write a lot of music in either Logic or Ableton Live. So.
Kev says, I aim for anything between -12 to -6 on my pre-masters. I prefer -12 for my pre's at the moment. It helps while I'm learning the mastering process. I mean, it's good that you're giving yourself headroom when mixing. That's a really, really good thing. It doesn't matter what the peak value ends up at. It doesn't matter at all because what's above the peak value is nothing. It's just a gap. But it's good that you're giving yourself headroom. But -12 isn't better than -6. The fact that you're giving yourself headroom is better than not giving yourself headroom. Get it?
It's for mixing or mastering.
He says pre-masters, meaning
Okay.
his mixes before going out to mastering.
Sure. Well, as long as it's got enough space, it's fine.
John says, it's true that there are common practices with certain genres, but that also means that probably your mix will sound like any other out there, and that could be a bad thing. Just mix and master the song. It is that simple.
Yeah.
It's not that simple. Yeah, but I know what you mean. There are common practices, but just because it's a common practice doesn't mean you should do it. You know what I mean? It's not...
I don't know, maybe if you're doing trip hop, you might be a certain style on the snare you want to mix. I don't know.
But that's a selection. That's a sound design.
Yeah.
That's a sound selection / design thing.
Would you class that as mixing?
I can't master a snare into another one.
No, but you could maybe, I don't know, change the mix a little bit.
If you are mixing the song that you're producing at the same time, you're just going back to choosing a different sound. That's not mixing. That's just...
So I'm just trying to think of an example where mixing a different genre.
If I'm mixing someone else's song, and this is a really delicate issue, but I might replace a drum with a snare or something like
Replace
that.
a drum?
With
Don't replace a
sample.
kick with a snare. That'd be weird.
A sample.
Yeah. Or double it up, or completely replace it or double it.
For the benefit of the mix,
I do a lot of doubling all the time.
Or layer it.
Yeah, of course.
We're blurring the lines, aren't we? But the lines are blurred these days, so it makes
That's
sense.
the thing. There's a lot of people like myself as well who write the music and then mix it as well.
Write the theme tune.
Write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. Anyone not from the UK won't get what we're on about, but Little Britain.
I think Little Britain.
They did do a Little Britain USA, but it wasn't quite the same.
No.
Yeah.
But we do export a lot of television to the US.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people in America know what Top Gear is, even though Top Gear is basically dead now.
It's not Top Gear, it's the Grand Tour now.
Well,
Anyway.
Top Gear is still Top Gear, but it's not the same Top Gear. Crowline says, what I find that after a couple of hours of mixing, I make a great mix, but listen to it the next day and it's worse than... Okay, cool. So I've got a tip for you. Create a fixed monitoring level. So you're mixing at a constant level, a constant loudness that is comfortable for you. Like, don't mix too loud, don't mix too quiet.
Don't do what I sometimes do, just gradually turn up.
Yeah, don't touch that thing.
Yeah.
If you need to make, if it needs to be louder, make the tracks louder. If it needs to, but find that level. Like, that never happens to me because I found my level. Don't touch that. Don't touch this. take breaks, but find that level that works for you. Like, I can master for hours because I found my level.
For me, a lot of it's what mood I'm in. Sometimes I could be in a really positive, great mood, and the mix is just working. And other times I listen back and that was awful.
My hearing seems to adjust whilst creating. Any tips on this? Yeah, don't be a human being. But that's it. Like, your hearing, we're just walking bags of chemistry. We're constantly changing. Everything about us, our biology, everything is changing all of the time. We age, we get tired, we get sick, we get annoyed. It's just a human condition. Unless you can, the reverse Bicentennial Man. Bicentennial Man's a great film. I watched it again recently.
There you go.
It's like 2.5 hours long though. It's almost as long as he was alive.
There you go. Right, I think we're going to head off soon. If you've got any more comments, questions, leave it now, but we'll try and answer them before we go.
Is it time?
Yeah.
I can't see the time.
So we've been on for an hour and 5 minutes.
Oh, it says here, look, started streaming an hour ago.
Yep, so if you've got any questions or anything about mixing or mastering, let us know. So who won in the debate, mixing or mastering? I went from boxing to like karate, yeah.
Okay, I've got one. Which martial art would you more...
Mixing would be MMA because it's a mix of everything, mixed martial arts, right? And mastering would be boxing because it's more of a technique. What do you think? Do you think it's the other way around?
I think that mastering is like
Kung Fu.
karate.
Okay.
No, that's self-defense. That doesn't make sense. Meditating. Great martial art.
Well,
mixing does win, Blue, you're right, because you can't master... You can mix and not master, but you can't master without mixing. Boom, there you go.
There you go.
And, to be honest, the master is only... Wait. The master is only as good as the mix, is only as good as the recording / song / arrangement / all of those things.
Oh, it's got the same analogy I use. Mastering is like icing on the cake.
I don't like that one.
He hates that.
I think that's too... I don't want to add anything. I don't want to put sugar on it. You know?
What about you just kind of carving the cake to make it shape a bit better? How about that?
Al Parola says, someone told me he was mastering every sound as a track and then doing a final mix for final mastering the bounce. I thought it was... Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one, Al Parola, because...
Yeah, that doesn't sound like much.
That doesn't make sense. Don't know how else to say that. You are right to think that that's crazy. Because I think
sounds like a crazy
unless
person.
I've interpreted that wrong.
Anyway, thank you for everyone that's watched this live stream. Episode 9. For joining us next week at 7 p.m. UK time. Wednesday, 7 p.m.
Thank you, guys. And make sure you're in the Digital Music Masters Facebook group as well.
If you go on facebook.com/group/Digital Music Masters. You can join there. We have some more discussions throughout the week. We have polls. We have a Q&A. Let us know how what you think. And yeah, thank you for watching. And we'll hopefully see you next week for episode 10. With 10 of these. What is 10? The big 10.
What are we going to do for 10? It's got to be a thing.
It's got to be a party, DMM party.
We might have glow sticks.
Yeah, right. We might have glow sticks. There might be whistles. Anyway, cool. Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
And we'll talk to you soon.